Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. How's everybody doing tonight? Okay. Thank you all for coming out. It's a pleasure for us to be here at Phase 2. Phase 2 was our home at AWE Nites for a long time before COVID, so it's really great for us to be back in the space. And speaking of the space, I want to introduce Dan, one of the owners. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. How's everybody doing tonight?
Hey, everyone.
Thank you all for
my name's
coming
Dan
out.
Pistefka. I'm one of the co-founders here at Phase 2. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces. We've been around since 2017, so we are a co-working space primarily curated around tech, media, and entertainment. So, we've gone through a bunch of these interesting sort of tech cycles, everything from VRA and blockchain.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Hey, everyone. My name is Dan Pistefka. I'm one of the
great
co-founders here. We host Phase 2 events again. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces.
Thanks for coming. I'm excited.
We've been around since 2017. So we are a co-working space primarily curated around tech, media, and entertainment.
Niantic.
So,
you'll be hearing from
we've gone through
Steve
a bunch of
later.
these interesting sort of tech cycles, everything from VRA and blockchain.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Hey, everyone. My name is Dan Pistefka. I'm one of the great co-founders here.
So
we host Phase 2 events again. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces.
Thanks for coming. I'm excited.
We've been around since 2017. So we are a co-working space primarily curated around tech, media, and entertainment.
Andrew,
So,
you'll be hearing
we've
from
gone
Steve.
through
They're
a bunch
helping
of
later.
these interesting sort of tech cycles, everything from VRA and
How's
blockchain.
everybody doing tonight?
Hey, everyone.
Volunteer. He works at Phase
My
2
name
and
is
he
Dan Pistefka.
put together all our things
here.
tonight. So
We
feel
host Phase 2
feel
events
free
again.
to
It's nice to
get
see a
up
bunch
and
of
get
familiar
during
faces.
event. So it would be an AWE
We've been
event
around
without
since
the AWE
2017.
slides. Here.
So we are a
tell you what's
co-working
going on
space primarily
globally.
curated
And
around tech, media, and
sponsor
entertainment.
Niantic. Andrew,
So,
Ray, you'll be hearing from
we've gone
Steve.
through
They're
a bunch
helping
of
later.
these interesting
They
sort
put
of
together all
tech
our
cycles.
Good evening, everybody.
Oh,
I'm on camera.
How's everybody doing tonight?
What's up, everyone?
Phase
My
2
name's
and
Ray.
he put together all our things tonight. So feel free to get up and get
My name is Raymond Moscow.
So it would be an
Susan and I have been
AWE
doing this
event
for
without
5 years.
AWE
We got our
slides.
start.
We
So
want
we
to
are
tell
a
you what's
co-working
going on
space
globally.
primarily curated
And
around tech, media, and
sponsor
entertainment.
Niantic. Andrew,
At this very spot, our first event.
they're helping later.
Interesting
They
sort
put
of
together all
tech
our
cycles.
Good evening, everybody. Something that
About it.
snap I'm on camera. I know we have some other speakers. What's up, everyone?
Phase
Pass
2
in the audience.
put together all our things tonight.
AWE Nites
Feel free to
extension
get up
of
and
my name is Raymond Moscow.
So it would be
Susan
an
and I have
AWE
been doing
event
this for
without
5 years.
AWE
We got our
slides.
start.
We want to tell you what's going on globally. And sponsor Niantic. Andrew,
At this very spot, our first event.
they're helping later.
I recommend y'all check it out. Incredible conference. Snap I'm on camera. I know we have some other speakers. What's up, everyone? Pass in the audience. AWE Nites state-of-the-art extension of my name is Bo Moscow. Susan and I y'all for 5 years. We got our start. We are
Sponsor Niantic. Andrew,
at this very spot, our first event. Y'all check it out. Incredible conference. Snap I'm on camera. I know we have some other what's up, everyone? Pass in the audience. AWE Nites state-of-the-art extension of my name is Bo Moscow. Susan and I y'all for 5 years. We got our start. We are As AWE Nites our first this allows you to have incredible confidence. Now, we have some other what's up with this? Because this is pretty beatable and comfort additionally, like I said, this is or the United States allows you to have incredible confidence. Now, we have some other what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and additionally, like I said, this is or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have incredible AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable and
I'm going to take it.
additionally, like I said, or United States allows you to have
First,
AWE Nites what's up with this? They're pretty beatable
So
You may be listening to So you can move from a 2D to 3D positions, which unlocks placements, occlusion, and meshing, creating full screen effects using different depth levels. So you can see here how that scanning on the right-hand side is turning into a live scan on the left-hand side and what you'll be able to build with. Next up is the occlusion aspect of it. When you have CG content like those little dots in the Peridot game, you'd expect them to in order to create a more immersive experience, expect them to interact with the real world. So that is where occlusion comes in handy, by scanning the world in front of you and making sure that any objects that you bring in are interacting and moving accordingly to it. And then next up, we have the ability for adding meshes. So this gives you the dynamic mesh from the depth, which allows you to have physics in the game. So for example, if you throw a ball, that ball will bounce off of different objects in the real world and allow it to interact in a more immersive way as an AR experience. And then lastly, with the semantics element, you can produce 2D masks of objects in the scene and have creatures react to them or infer actions from them. So this was something that was really seen in, if you all have seen the really viral TikTok video from Matter AR, they built a laser tag experience, and that uses a lot of this so that you can build your cover, so to speak. You build walls, and those walls act as your deflection for the laser in the laser tag, which is really cool. And then lastly, we have our navigation element to it. So with navigation, you can create a mesh using depth and the meshing tech to allow for creatures to navigate in the real world as you'd expect a pet to, for example, when you're out walking like your dog. So that brings us to, I'm running out of time here, so I'm trying to do this really quickly. Sorry, y'all. Maps, VPS, and shared AR are all very similar, both in Eighth Wall and Lightship, as far as how you build with them and their total capability. So Lightship Maps gives you the ability to have a real-world map, and you can customize that in a variety of different ways. You can add elements to it, and it's really just your one-stop shop for having a map in your AR experiences when having something like a scavenger hunt or anything along those lines. VPS is our location AR. We have currently the largest 3D map of the world, accessed through our geospatial browser, both on Lightship side and Eighth Wall side, giving you the ability to download a mesh of the real world and develop experiences for that mesh. And with that, you can scout, author, and persist content to that location. So you can leverage anchors and a variety of different locations and also create shared AR experiences at those locations. So I'm gonna play this quick video here in the bottom right. Oh, no, it won't play, never mind. And yeah, lastly is our shared AR capabilities, which is our multiplayer capabilities. And again, here kind of emphasizing the point that you can create VPS experiences and add a shared AR element to those experiences. And lastly, before I wrap, we are currently running our Explore Together challenge, which is a VPS-focused challenge for both Eighth Wall and Lightship developers. So if you're interested in participating in that, we have $15,000 in prize pool to a variety of different prizes. If you want to learn more, you can hit that link, afe.io/challenges, and that'll take you to our sign-up page. But that is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and hand it out to our much better speakers from Trigger XR, James and Kristen, to give you all a quick talk about their Trigger XR background, and then also talk a little bit about Rangers Wanted. So, yeah. Great way to transition, right?
All right. Hi, everyone. Well, what you're seeing in the back background is our sizzle reel. I'm Kristen Glushan. I oversee our brand partnerships and our marketing at Trigger XR, the world's most experienced XR agency. We've been doing this for over 15 years. Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone online too. We've been doing this for over 15 years, working with a number of brands across mobile AR, headsets, and immersive worlds like Roblox. So you'll see a sampling of some of our work, and today we're going to talk about Rangers Wanted, which is the mobile AR app that we built on the Lightship Niantic ARDK for the Teddy Roosevelt Presidential Library. So I'll go into a little bit of the background and share some of the objectives and some of the latest results as it launched on President's Day, and then we'll hand it over to James to talk a little bit more about the development. But enjoy the rest of the sizzle. This was also a Lightship experience for Jurassic World Dominion. We've built 4 apps with the Lightship ARDK, including for Coachella, Universal Studios, and for PGA Junior. And then Rangers Wanted, which we'll talk about as well. We've also built a number of experiences with Eighth Wall, and yeah, you'll see some of those, including the Pepsi one that Pablo mentioned as well. All right, next, and I'll let you introduce yourself after, James, if that's okay. All right, I'm gonna try and look back here, but so Rangers Wanted was an app that was launched, as I said, for President's Day in support of the Teddy Roosevelt Presidential Library. This is, I think, one of those really amazing opportunities for us as developers and agencies to pair an institution like a library with technology and innovation. And so what their objective was to reach a younger audience, get them excited about being in the great outdoors, and really advance Teddy Roosevelt's dream, which was to conserve our environments and make the gameplay really fun and interactive. And so in partnership with Niantic, we were able to use their ARDK, really lean into their meshing feature, and bring to life an environment that would be highly interactive through mini games and other experiences. Also, as a parent, we needed to make sure that it was kid safe. That was a stamp of approval that we also got on the PGA Junior app as well. So those were some of the key objectives that were important to both the library and their partners at Storytelling Lab, and then as well as Niantic. Oh, next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the game. I promise you, when you see the sizzle reel, the theme song, although it's thankfully pretty low, it's going to get in your head for a little while, but this is all brought to life by Teddy Roosevelt. You know, he's the father of our national park system. The library itself actually is not going to be open for a couple of years. Hello? Okay, thank you. But through this experience, you are a ranger. So Teddy Roosevelt, he introduces the experience, and you get to go through a number of environments, helping 6 different animals, ranging from the beaver to the ocelot to the Arctic fox. I don't have them all memorized, sorry. To the rusty patch bumblebee, to the ivory-billed woodpecker. And it's really fun because it's bringing kids either outdoors into the real world or taking advantage of their indoor environment. They're acquiring different badges. You know, kids are very reward-centric, so obviously that was something that was baked into the game design. But it's a really fun, interactive experience that we were able to bring to life. And just sharing a little bit about the results. Oh, that's okay. No worries. So first, make sure you download the app to, keep in mind this is, an institution that we're helping to support as well. And I'd encourage all of you to have fun playing with it. It is live. It's also something that got a lot of press coverage, thankfully, and hopefully will be something that through the library, when they break ground, they'll be able to have QR codes throughout and have some sort of call to action. But we're hopeful that the library and with Trigger's support and with Niantic, that this will have like a long tail. And it'll be a great way to sort of memorialize an institutional thing like a library with innovation through Niantic's ARDK. So with that, I'll pass it along to James to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm James Roosevelt. I'm Director of Tech for Trigger. I've been with the company for just a little over 6 years now. Oversaw the development of this project alongside just about everything that we've done with Lightship. So I have pretty intimate knowledge of the tech and how it works, and can speak to how awesome it is as a developer to be leveraging this technology. I think we have a quick video, really quick, before we jump into the stuff I'll be presenting. So let's play that. And there's no way we can unhear that song. Burned into our memory at this point. I'm going to move over a seat too, because I haven't memorized these slides, and it'd be helpful if I could see them a little better. So I'm going to talk about game design. We did a version of this a month or so ago with Niantic on a webinar, where we dove into it at a little deeper of a technical level. So if anyone's super interested in that, definitely look up the webinar. It's really good, or ask us afterwards. So let's cover the game design and how we approach that here for Rangers Wanted. So the challenge. Game design is really hard. Like, from start to finish, it is incredibly difficult, and it can be that way for a million reasons. Whether it's budget, time constraints, or like purely finding the fun of what you're building, everything's kind of against you from the start. So the way that we wanted to approach this is like, how do we find common elements, and how do we use game design broadly as a tool to make the project work for us, given a lot of constraints that we were facing throughout the entire project? Cool. The first way we decided to approach this, or a methodology for this one, is kind of like this game flow loop that we have here. We wanted a very similar repetitive game loop, but we wanted variety in the actual activity that you'd be doing. So the piece there is the puzzle piece. That's the part that's going to change out depending on the animal that you're helping in this experience. The rest of this is kind of following the same kind of flow, where you're getting instructions, setup, and the reward payoff afterwards. So we're just kind of swapping out that middle interactive piece, which kind of like increases what we thought replayability and keeps the gameplay fresh, as long as you are kind of rotating out that interactive portion of the experience. In addition to that, the mechanic was really, really important to us achieving success here. We wanted to find a repeatable mechanic that could be used a lot of different ways, so that the technical implementation wasn't like super difficult. What we landed on at the end of the day was the simple tap touch mechanic, which is proven. It works, it's fine. No need to change it or break it. So we tried to keep that in mind and approach every mini game as we were ideating them, coming up with the concepts, to really leverage the tap in interesting ways that felt different, even though at the end of the day, all you're doing is touching a screen. Yeah, and as I called out, this reduces overall iteration, because touch interaction is one of the easiest to perfect. You know, for other game mechanics like motion, movement, character, whatever, a lot more iteration, a lot more time to perfect those more complex mechanics. So simplifying here really paid dividends. Another one, in terms of gameplay, kind of going back to the mini games again, they were all very similar. They use touch mechanics. One of the ways that we could make these feel a little bit different was with the timing of them. So some games were intentionally faster, where you're like spam touching to achieve something, or fill a meter or something like that. And then some, like this one, the Bumblebee here, were intentionally slower, where you're kind of walking around your space, scanning, meshing, looking for flowers that were spawning, and matching two flowers of a similar make, I should say. So that kind of varied gameplay between the slow, methodical kind of things like this one versus a spam tap to fill a meter. Varying that along the way is something we felt was very successful. And the other thing too is like when you are leaning into aspects of timing, all of this is really easy to change up. So whether you're adjusting the timing of the minigame itself, whether it's 60 seconds or a minute and a half or whatever, or actually kind of like the variables for scoring that also play into timing, you have a lot of control at your disposal. So we found that exposing these things, putting them in the hands of the user and kind of getting that feedback and was really useful. Okay, this one's obvious, but if you're building an experience in AR, make use of that space. Use your AR, use the space around you, verticality. We built this experience to support both indoor and outdoor play scenarios. So one of the cool challenges in actually making use of AR space was kind of thinking through the process of how this works in an indoor space, how it scales to work in an outdoor space, and how that might also in fact some of the timing attributes we already talked about, the scoring attributes, and still keep it engaging, maybe even across a play space that might be twice as big outdoors versus indoors. Verticality was really cool here. We could spawn in trees at higher heights when you're outdoors, so forcing users to look up and around and explore. Again, making use of their physical space around them was really cool and crucial here. Cool. In education, we wanted to teach users about the animals that they're helping, about how they are key to their ecosystems and the environment, and we wanted to do that in a way that didn't bog down gameplay or like slow it down or interrupt it in any way at all. So we did that through like a badge, or what you might think of like an achievement system, a collection mechanic. So there'd be rewards for finishing a gameplay at a 1-star rating versus a 3-star rating. Every time you would do so, you would unlock one of the badges you see over here, which gives you a tidbit more information about the animal you're trying to protect and help in their environment. There were other kind of Easter egg mechanics overlaid onto this kind of like base education unlock system, where we would use other creatures like a small firefly or insect to fly through the user's space to kind of also promote that looking around their physical space. That would also kind of unlock badges here. And we think this was really nice again because it didn't slow down the gameplay at all, didn't inhibit, but maybe even actually rather encouraged replayability over time for those people that are achievement hunters. Okay, now we'll get into the challenges and learning section. Cool, so overall project learnings, overall project learnings here is, at the end of the day, take advantage of the space around you if you're building an AR experience. That AR spatial mechanic is legitimately a game mechanic of its own. You can create a sense of urgency by spreading objects out in distance, which is something we found really quickly while testing this out. That was probably one of the most fun mechanics of playing this game outside at all. So we found that awesome. Consider all player types is another one too. In the foundational steps of starting a game, you scan your space with the meshing tech, and what it's doing is what we call rewilding your space. So it's decorating the entire space around you with flowers, fauna, stones, pebbles to match that of the ecosystem of the animal. Some people enjoyed doing this more than playing the mini games themselves. So it kind of broke us out of that shell of like how people are going to be playing our game, and to try and think of it in ways that might not be super straightforward to you, but like what other people might want to do is just decorate, explore, not play a frantic mini game of touching. So I think looking back, we'd probably try to lean into that a little bit more, or just think about how we might want to push that feature in like a future update or something. And again, last thing here is be iterative. Don't be afraid to throw away the work that you're doing. That's kind of like key to any game design. As a developer, you get super attached to the stuff that you're building. And one of the things I tell my team all the time is try not to do that. It's great to have ownership and pride over what you're building, but especially in games, at the end of the day, you need to be ready to throw it away in a moment's notice if it's not meeting expectations, not finding the fun. So that was a key learning and a tough learning for us here. From game design, Again, game design, as I kind of started off at the get-go, is it should be used as a tool to combat your other project constraints or difficulties. They're super hard. So identifying pieces that you think are going to be reusable over time throughout your project is going to help you go a really long way. Thinking about educational aspects of your games or experiences that you're building in ways that don't necessarily inhibit gameplay might be worth doing. There are worlds where you certainly want it integral to the gameplay. And then there's worlds like in our situation where it didn't necessarily need to be force-fed during gameplay. And I think that was super successful for us. And all these decisions ultimately are kind of gearing us up to what we hope is an expanded experience in the future. We have self-contained mini games. We have that core repeatable loop where these things can easily be expanded, where we can drop in new mini games, new educational content. We've kind of established that platform. So I think game design is also a way, when properly thought through, set up, to plan for future success and expansion of the projects that you're working on. Tech learnings, these are really fun too. Again, look up that webinar because we go into this in a lot more depth than that one, and we get into tech talk for about 20 minutes. But I think the themes here are still very similar. And it matches what we're trying to do in game design. So when we're defining our project architecture systems, we wanted to build that in a way that was expandable so that we could add to it over time. We could be flexible in swapping in mini games, content, educational aspects, really defining that core gameplay loop as something that was repeatable and expandable, paid dividends for us. A lot of these are a lot more contextual to the other presentation, but at the end of the day, they are always good practice. So the second one here is talking about build size. There are super strict requirements on both app stores, wherever you're going to be shipping, that say your app must be within a certain file size limit. That will stop you from submitting whenever you get around to it. So always keep that in mind. Be sure all your assets are optimized in every way possible. It could come back to bite you. Lightship AirDK makes a lot of really great features. I would also say there's some incredibly underrated or underutilized features of Lightship that were great for us. The key one I would say is going to be the game board or game controller was integral to us actually like building this thing out. I think that was what, Pablo, you were showing during the navigation portion of the characters kind of walking from surface to surface. So game board was certainly one of the features that we leverage more than any other here alongside the meshing. Other ones, pretty obvious, start your prototyping as early as possible. That leans into the don't be afraid to throw away your work. Ideally, prototyping should begin like even before pre-production. Even from, I guess, the way that I'd like to approach it is, if you're pitching a concept or trying to sell through a concept, that's probably about the same time you should be prototyping things to make sure that it's feeling, functioning, even doable in the way that you want to do it. Lastly, a couple notes here. Don't get caught up in the optimizations with small returns in early development. It could be a rabbit hole when in the early days you really just need to keep moving as fast as possible. That can come later when you're worrying about your app build size, all that kind of stuff. So it's not good to get hung up on that early. And then the last one, pretty tech-oriented, making sure your data is organized in a way that's modular, expandable is also a great way to approach your development here. Okay. I think that's it for Trigger. If you have questions, please find us afterwards. I'm going to hand this over to Alex from Mousepack. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Trigger, they are the OGs for XR development, so it is always a treat to hear what they're working on. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex. I own a studio called Mousepack, and what it is it's a collection of artists, and we work with the sole focus of creating augmented reality projects. So I'll just show you some projects we've worked on, and I'm just going to give you a little breakdown into the process. So here is our quick little sizzle reel, but we're showing a few projects in here. Not all of them are WebAR, but some of them are. And some are for brands like Snapchat to be able to work on their apps, as well as TikTok and other AR platforms. But we try to have a style in the work that we do. It all feels like it lives within one universe, one extended Mousepack universe. And we really are developer focused. That's something that is helps us stand out, is that we like to really build deep deep relationships with artists and developers in our area. I just moved here from New York, so I had a lot of friends, and we go bowling and talk about AR projects together. But we also like to just come up with new fun mechanics, or maybe recycle some mechanics that we haven't seen in a while. As you can see, we have this gravity gun, if anybody has played Half-Life 2. It's a mechanic that has been reused multiple times. James was talking about using one mechanic that can be used over and over and over again. So we're trying to figure out what are the base mechanics for augmented reality. Here are a few WebAR projects, specifically through 8th Wall. On the left there, we have what's called Central Park Adventure, Central Park Quest. And we're using the Lightship SDK to be able to map out a few different areas inside of Central Park. And we have the badge system. So we created the little Pokemon badge system that every time you go to one of these areas, you could take a little photo with your friend Rocky here. This middle one I'll show you, we entered for the shared experience with 8th Wall, and we have a little bot bash. If anybody has ever seen BattleBots, heavily inspired from that. And then we have our sky segmentation effect experience here. We call it cloud catch. So you're sucking up clouds and learning information about them. But let's go into cloud catch. So this was for 8th Wall's Sky Effect Challenge. So they have talked about the challenges, but what it is they essentially say, hey, there's a prize pool, make something with a few of these mechanics that we're trying to showcase. And in this instance, it was sky segmentation. So we wanted to originally come up with something where you're maybe shooting UFOs out of the sky or playing Tetris in the air, but we wanted to make it family friendly to fit in with the brand of Mousepack. So we thought about Luigi's Mansion, like sucking ghosts out of the air, but we're like, oh, what if we make it like clouds? And we spun some narrative about how you're learning about the clouds, and when you collect all the clouds you can see at the bottom, it goes to 100%, and then it brings you to the NASA website about climate change, and you can learn more about clouds. One fun thing, you can't see it quite here. I don't know where it happened to it, but it was just the UI element. So if you look in the middle, you see how when it's pointed at the cloud, and then when you are selecting it, it gets tighter. That was a really fun, simple UI mechanic that I think worked really well, and I'd say that's probably the proudest thing I got out of this whole experience, was that like just little tightening of that ring. It seems very simple, but that tap gesture is something that doesn't necessarily register with people. You can be tapping, but if something's not immediately happening, they feel like it's broken. So what was nice about this is when you tap, it shrinks, and then when you let go, it goes out. And that transition between it really helps sell it. So feel free to use that in all your projects. Let's see what the next one is here. So this is Bot Bash. As we named, it's a 8th Wall shared experience. There's my wife and I in our house in Long Beach, New York, actually. And it's 2 players, so you can swing these little bots around and just smack each other. So that was our first like foray into shared experiences. And then where we really took that home is with this other game here that we did as a cohort for Niantic. Niantic invited us and 2 other teams to create games that would work on both phones and headsets on the same time, but would also be multiplayer. So they called it metaversal deployment, right? And it's still available right now. So you can build one product, one experience, and it automatically launches on Quest, Vision Pro right now, mobile. So what we made was a game where there's a board, a game board, because unfortunately the positional data isn't one-to-one. So we need to have an area that they're looking at. But let me just show you some footage here. You'll see for yourself. So one player has one color car, and the other player has the other color, and you just gotta bounce them off. So I was pretty happy with that. The main thing is just the ability to use physics, I think, is really important for me in my projects. It makes a new experience every single time because, you know, you move it 1 meter or 1 centimeter to the left and it hits the cars and creates a completely different collision. What was important, though, was making it turn-based because we had to have all those simulations running, but we couldn't necessarily do them at the same time. It's just too much data going back and forth, and things would get lost. If there's a fraction of a frame rate that's lost, it would look completely different on someone else's phone. So that is why we decided to make it turn-based. But what's cool, and I think if I click this again, it should play it. Here's just some more footage of what it looks like on the headset. So you can kind of rotate the board. We added some controls. They are, I will say, they can be optimized to be better, but we were definitely trying something new. We were trying a mechanic that works well on the phone as well as the controller. So on the phone, it works very nicely. You can kind of slide your phone, you slide your thumb back and pull them. And we mirrored that. So when you pull the cars, that's what kind of adjusts the power and direction. And there's my wife gloating because she just knocked my cars off. But that goes on until all the cars are gone, and then it starts again. It's very replayable. There's a fun moment. That one moment where they all crash, that's when everybody goes, ah, in the room, and that's really what we built this whole thing around. It's just that one cool, reproducible moment. Here's my vision board. I'll show you a little bit about my pitch process. They came to us, they're like, hey, you have a game? And this is sort of what I showed them. So crashes was important to me. I wanted to find the most family-friendly car crash I could find, so that's a Lego simulation. There's like hours and hours of that footage online. I don't know why. People must clip it and put it under the bottom of a TikToks or something. But the idea was that it's two teams. They can smack elements into each other. Curling, you can see our homie down there with the USA. He's just locked in as he's sliding that down. But the idea that you can take turns throwing objects to try to bump someone else's object to win, that was really the importance. And then I just love this little balloon car. I found this reference, and I'm like, that's it. That's our game right there. So we built just, again, simple, going as simple as possible, like James was saying, trying to figure out what is that core mechanic. Because this is being used on different devices, we want to make sure that it's even more simple. So power and direction, those are the two things that we had control over. And then how they got that power and direction was just dependent on what they were creating. And yeah, this is just a little bit of the behind the scenes when we were just making it. You can see that these are just like some early marbles that were just kind of launching at each other. But what's cool, this whole process, is that you can test it on device as you're building it. We were able to test it we had Quest headsets, testing it on phones. Yeah, and now we have the ability to do it on Apple Vision Pros if anybody can afford those. So, yeah, here's a little bit more, just some of the UVs, showing you what our textures look like on our cars. I'm pretty proud of how they turned out. But that is it for me. I would love to meet any developers and animators specifically. I'm hiring right now, and I figured I'd throw that out here at the end of this event because we're all here for AWE. So that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break for you guys to get food, because there's like now there's a lot of food. So if you just want to go grab some food and then come back, and then we'll start Q&A. So 5 minutes for those of you streaming. And then... Okay, if everybody could please take your seat, we're going to get started with Q&A. For those of you at home streaming in, we're going to get started in just another minute. We took a quick food break. Okay, so who has a question for any one of our esteemed speakers?
Two questions. And I might have missed it, but Teddy into the gameplay, because I didn't see anything that specifically tied it to him versus just a nature experience. Second piece is the library, I looked it up when you were talking, is going to be in western North Dakota, kind of off the beaten path. Has the library discussed their roadmap where they want to do something that's location-based to reward people to actually show up?
These are great questions. And I'd like to answer probably both at the same time because it kind of applies to future roadmaps potentially. In terms of Teddy, he definitely gives you the intro of what you're going to be doing for every character you're going to help out. He's going to give you the foray in your first launch of the experience and say, I'm recruiting rangers. I want you to do this and this and this for me and help out all these wonderful animals. In doing so, you're going to collect badges, and when you collect badges, you're going to become a certified Teddy Roosevelt Ranger for the experience. So he'll kind of paint the picture of what you're doing and give you a task before you start each mini game, and then from then on out, it's kind of the animals telling the story and in sharing the educational aspect of the game. Looking at future roadmaps for the library, this is really interesting because I think there's ways we can leverage Teddy and we can leverage locations big time here, and that's probably right where our heads are at right now is like, for Teddy, do we leverage him potentially as an AI chat bot kind of character using a service like InWorld or any of those other kinds of NLP processing to generative text chat bot experiences? Something we're definitely talking about, which would be really cool, have like a 3D Teddy in your experience that's there with the animals that you can interact with other than the flat image of him giving you instructions as a user. And then of course with VPS tech, obviously like looking beyond users' living rooms and outdoor spaces, there is a lot of opportunity to push this to landmarks in national parks or the library itself so you can have the content and the animals live in the actual location. From there you worry about things like cell service, connectivity and whatnot, of course, but humongous opportunity there that I hope we get to play into. Okay. So no plans yet for those things, but they're all on our minds right now.
Good.
Hi, I have a question for Alex.
I think that one's dying. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, there we go. Question. So
Hey, what's up?
I was really drawn to how you do kind of like a lot of your vision boarding, and just kind of like showing your process of how you're going to like build out the experience. What does everything look like? Do you just like to show visuals to kind of like ideate a lot of your process, or do you do like full-on storyboarding with notes, so on and so forth? And then how do you translate that to like a client or somebody you're pitching to?
Yeah, great question. So just to be clear, I work with a team. So when it's like I do this, I'm talking about a collective, like I'd say 3 to 10 people, depending on the project. And that also kind of answers how much I do per project. It depends how much budget there is. So if you're doing a project for yourself, I try to knock it out in a few days. You know what I mean? I'm not going to spend a day vision boarding and all that. But if it's for a client and they have a substantial budget and you feel like you have a really good idea, it only benefits you to do as much work to show your idea. So there's no limit to that. But I will say what I do recommend is something I've been doing recently, which is hiring UX designers specifically to show my vision to clients. So I will have an idea, right? But I can articulate it. I can see it in my brain. I have the vision. But I need someone who can walk a client through that process. And this is important for any innovation company. Like giant consulting firms are hiring UX designers all the time to do this. You need to tell them like, hey, this is something that hasn't been done before. This is what it's gonna look like. This is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. And if you can do that in just really loose sketches, it doesn't have to look pretty. That is a super, super powerful asset. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Say it with a mouthful of food, yeah. Chew into the mic.
Okay, great. Just a question. I think this is probably like a client, relation stuff as far as like, how do you manage client expectations as far as, ROI or impact, or, how many downloads do you get, or how many hits or media hits or press hits, or I feel like, it's still in a, it's not in a bigger social media TikTok number range. So how do you kind of measure success?
That's Trigger for sure.
Yeah, I can take this, and then Alex, I'd love to hear your opinion too, but I think it's a collaborative process that we want to get on the radar of the clients we're working with at any given time. I think the days of things happening organically or going viral are a lot less likely and less occurring. So it has to come from like a mutual investment from them and you to put up marketing efforts, budget, whatnot, to make that happen. From like an internal team, like from my team, what that looks like too is like post-launch support is something you need to identify from the get-go with the clients you're working with. Do they want continuous updates, bug fixes well after your product launch? Are they willing to pay for that? Because it's not cheap, right? So you got to talk and identify these things early with them, get on their radar, so that you can support it post-launch, because that's what it needs.
Yeah, I can speak to this. If a client ever says the goal of their project is to go viral, just immediately turn it down, because you're never going to satisfy if it's just numbers. And if they want numbers, they'll go to TikTok, right? Any ad agency I talk to, if they're really into numbers, they're like, we want TikTok and 8th Wall. And I'm like, okay, those are 2 very different things. So I ask, why do you want TikTok? And they're like, well, just numbers, right? It's just a greedy, like, oh, there's millions and millions of people, and you can, I say greedy, but it works, right? That opens a lot of doors, that unlocks a lot of money, etc. But 8th Wall has a different power, and it's not numbers. It's the ability that it bumps straight to their URL. And if you get 300 people to do that, that is way more valuable of an ROI, depending on what the client wants. So what I'm saying is, give them different stats. If you're not getting millions and millions of views on the projects you want, then show them how many shares it had. Show them how many saves. That was one I did. It didn't go viral, but I was trying to display success, and I noticed one of my, it was a Snapchat lens, but it had 500 saves. And I thought that was really interesting because I hadn't seen that before. And I mentioned that to the client. They're like, that's really good. And they wrote that down, and they're bragging about it because it meant people were going back to it. So it's all about how you tell that, and companies are getting better about how they're sharing analytics with you so that you can tell that story. But it's really on you as the creator to sell the numbers, and the numbers are meaningless. So just make something up.
But there's a question from the live stream.
Oh, okay. No worries. Hi, my name is Rylan. I'm an AR/VR developer, and I'm always kind of thinking about like where the future of all this AR/VR stuff is going. I was wondering if like each of you could share like what experience or kind of a potential of XR you think is most exciting to each of you in the next 5 years. Either like an experience you've like dreamed would be like cool to build yourselves, or even just generally like what are you like most excited for either building or experiencing in AR/VR in the next 5 years?
Hi, yeah, so for me personally, my whole experience with AR and VR primarily is more AR, and I'd like to see it a little bit more red light testing, in the sense of being able to use it with your real world, right? So personally, a project that I would like to see happen is, as a cyclist, there is a app called Strava, and on Strava there's a world full of segments that are essentially like global competitions where the fastest to finish that segment wins, like an invisible trophy. And I would love to, in a future where sunglasses can also have data more easily displayed, maybe even like a ghost, similar to how we see video games where you're playing a racing game, you see like a ghost car that you're chasing. That is something that I'm currently already working on and trying to figure out how we can bring in data from Strava into, for example, 8th Walls VPS to see if the bones of that can be at least built, and then eventually when the technology arrives, actually build it for real use cases.
I guess I'll go then. Yeah, I think for me it breaks down to two areas. HMD is really exciting. I think it's a bit of a bubble right now that might burst in terms of just excitement in the industry with all these crazy launches happening this year. I don't think that means we should rule HMD out, but in that space, I think I'm excited for productivity experiences to really take off. More fitness training, more lifestyle types of experiences. Hopefully when headsets and those devices get to a more wearable factor that aren't just giant toasters on your face. So I'm excited for that. And then otherwise, kind of looking ahead, I really am excited to see how WebXR plays into everything. Because I think we're already seeing a little bit of a decline in app-based AR and XR experiences. I think web is going to be majority of the future, less barrier to entry. Everybody can access web, no problem. So I'm excited for that to take off in a big way in the HMD space.
Cool. Yeah, I want to say headsets, but it's so far away, man. Like we have to like invent crystal technology before it makes sense, because we can only shrink batteries so much, you know. And right now we're kind of stuck with lithium, as I've heard it. And you have to have a really significant source of power to be able to have a computer that can do 365-degree constantly refreshing frame rate machine. So I'm very excited for that future, but I think it's still another 10 years until we get to that mass adoption point. I might be wrong on that. So what I'm really focused on right now is phone experiences that mimic that and are still fun without having to wear a headset. And that's very difficult to do. Because there's not much you can do. You can tap the screen, you can move it around, but those are really your only inputs. So what I like doing is multiplayer experiences, trying to use the other person's body tracking as a game. We did one game called Piggy Smash, where it was a shared room and there's these little flying piggy banks and you have to run around and try to hit them with a hammer. So the only mechanic we had was moving in your space and tapping the screen, but you can see the other person playing. And that alone made it like this crazy engaging experience because you can see the other person doing it. So I like to imagine the future where if anybody's played like RuneScape or Warcraft or any of those RPGs, like I like to see a future where you can ideally put on a headset, see that you're playing the game too, and then we can have like a sword battle and you know what I mean, like a different layer, and maybe you could turn it to a different layer. Okay, I don't want to see the people in sword battles today. I want to see the people who are networking about cryptocurrency, and then I flip it to the crypto, and then I flip to that channel, and then I see a bunch of apeheads, But that's where I hope it goes, is community building and all of the things that Niantic has been trying to do, adventure on foot with others. That's it to me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have a question from streamers. If AWE.
Sure, yeah, I can go first. When we fully at AWE, we'll be right by the ticketing entrance, so you'll make sure to find it there, and we'll have a variety of different things being showcased, including a scavenger hunt. So that the first person that finishes that. There we go again. Test. And we will also have, like I mentioned earlier, live programming where ideally everyone that attends will be able to leave that programming with a AR experience either built or started on AWE or Lightship. So keep an eye out for the dates and all of that being shared on our socials. But yeah, just find us there. We'll have a big team representing Niantic as a whole.
I'll be at AWE. I can't say what I'll be showing, but I'm showcasing some really cool projects. So if you're at AWE, make sure to come find me.
Alex is also teaching one of the
Yeah, I didn't
workshops.
know if I could talk about that.
Yeah, well, we can't talk about what he's teaching, but he will be teaching.
There'll be some workshops and some really cool stuff that I'm very proud of.
Trigger will have a presence at AWE. I'm going to be speaking on a Unity roundtable about development for Vision Pro. I think that's happening the Monday before it formally kicks off on the 18th. So look out for that on probably Trigger Social or Unity's. I'm sure they'll post out some links for that. Come say hi, and otherwise I'll probably be hanging around the Niantic booth with all these guys the rest of the time. Trigger has a few other panels too, so if you look at the schedule for the event, you'll probably see some of our biz dev folks talking about working with our clients, as well as some other kind of roundtable events that we're going to be participating in.
Hello. My question's about the Rangers in particular. Do you maybe the reward system into some sort of IRL experience at the museum to kind of bring it full circle?
There's no plans right now, but this is totally what we strive to achieve in any experience we built. We built like a Roblox experience for PGA, and we invented kind of this, we were one of the first to do it like a flywheel where you would unlock things with a mobile AR experience that played into the Roblox experience. So we're always kind of thinking of those synergistic things where your unlocks here could do things over there. So no plans yet, but I'm really hoping so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
For
you can.
Trigger?
Please.
Okay. Trigger, I have a question. When making the Rangers Wanted game, what, if you can tell me, what was the creative brief that came to your desk?
It was pretty broad. They wanted us to tell the story and kind of thought process, messaging, inspiration of Teddy Roosevelt and embody him in an AR experience. Wanted to tell and convey his sense of the importance of the environment, conservationism, all those great things that he stood for. And other than that, it was left up to us to determine how we were going to do that. And I will say, it's definitely one of our challenges on the project is we had a lot of people involved in all aspects from top tier decision making within Trigger to our creative team to engineers. We had too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone wanted to instill something on the application, and what it ultimately came down to was the time we had to build it. So that's why we approached this in a way that we wanted to make the game design work for us, because we had probably taken a little bit too long in concepting exactly how to do this justice in the right way. So I think, you know, the goals were very broad, and that might have been a little dangerous at the start. And ultimately, you need to make a decision. So I think getting to that point was a great learning process for us. And we still produced what I think is a really cool experience that does Teddy Roosevelt justice.
Yeah, I love how you have, I mentioned the Fortnite chipping away little numbers system. I'm going to steal that, so thank you.
Up. Exactly. Right. James, you mentioned prototyping, but who cares? You mentioned prototyping. This will actually go to all of you. When you're prototyping, how much are you doing that in real space? Using physical objects, figuring out how, the users are going to interact, either with the physical space itself or with what you're going to replace with virtual objects. Because when you were showing the cars one, I was like, oh, marbles, right? That there's bringing marbles into an AR setup. So how much of your prototyping starts or involves physicality?
I think it has to happen pretty quickly. Like, you can have a bunch of ideas for what you think is going to work well when you're building this thing in an engine or whatever you're building it in. But you need to get it on the device and test it in a space really quickly to prove whether your theory of whether it's going to work in someone's bedroom or 5 square doors, whether your concept holds up. So for us, I think it was a matter of weeks before we were developing in the start in Unity in the engine, before we were deploying and testing on a phone in a physical space. Something I wish we would have done is some form of like physical paper prototyping. I don't think that should be eliminated for even virtual AR experiences. I think finding the way to make that work is challenging depending on your concept too, but I don't think it should be ruled off the table at any point. So in terms of that prototyping step, again, it was only a matter of weeks before we were testing in our bedrooms, in our office, things like that.
Yeah, I can speak to, especially the cars one. That was a lot of rapid iteration. What was cool about that is we could push it to headset. So my developer was like in and out of a headset like all day, just like pushing and testing and pushing and testing and pushing and testing. So I'd say a lot, and I'd say the more you do that, the better your experience is. There's definitely a trap that developers fall into where they make a really good experience on the computer and then they push it to their phone and it's barely usable. But they're just so excited because it's working in the browser and it's working how they want. So we do a few different milestones, and our first milestone is just like an MVP. So I showed you the marbles up there. That was like, okay, this is a proof of concept. Now we can start to swap out cars and start to tweak other things.
I'll add on to that really quick if that's cool. When you are prototyping too, you don't need fancy visuals in any way to prove that the fun is there. You can use primitive shapes and objects, and you will capture that funness of your experience, and you'll know when you're there, even without polished anything, creative UI models, you name it. So totally agree. You can find the fun with primitive shapes.
So let's wrap it up. Do you guys want to say anything, like, to finalize? Do you feel complete?
Yeah, I can just really quickly reiterate that. I can't say too much, and I'm sure you all are probably tired of hearing me say be very secretive, but at AWE for 8th Wall, we are launching a new feature that is going to make it easier and improve the overall development process for developing WebAR experiences, and make it so that it's a lower barrier of entry as well. So we're really excited about that. So join us at AWE if you can. Otherwise, keep an eye out on 8thwall.com for the announcement of that coming mid 2 weeks from now. Yeah.
My final words are just, I love this industry. It's really fun.
I got to say something. VPS has huge untapped potential in all spaces right now. I think there's something cool to be solved there. No business knows how to do VPS, it seems. Solving that is going to be huge, and anybody could do it. So I think the opportunity is tremendous in that space.
Okay, can we give a warm round of applause for our speakers? Thank you so much, guys. So we have the space until 9 o'clock. Feel free to stay and talk to the speakers if you guys can stay, and please eat more food. And thanks for coming out.